Hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide to the Cosmere. I'm Nick Gorman, I'm your co-host and Reddit enthusiast. I'm the guy who doesn't do any actual research.
And I'm Abby Gorman. I'm just here to talk about Mistborn.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of, I don't know, you did a lot of the actual, looking up on the copper mine and all the, cross-referencing. I'm really excited to see what you've got for us because I'm, just more of a touchy-feely kind of thing. What did I think of the read?
Well, this episode we're just going to focus on the book by itself.
Yeah,
we'll do another episode focusing on how it ties into the Cosmere. But this episode we're gonna appreciate Final Empire for everything that it is just on its own.
Yeah, no, I dig. You had quite a few post-it flags on your book, so that's what I'm excited to talk about in this episode and the next one.
All right. Well, what I'm excited to talk about is my favorite part of Final Empire is those epigraphs.
Oh, yeah?
I freaking love the epigraphs. I love it anytime an author can kind of break out of the traditional storytelling mode and just pack as much into a book as possible. And those epigraphs are definitely one of my favorite devices that an author has used.
They're really good for like the foreshadowing. Like there's dense foreshadowing for this book, but also for the first Mistborn trilogy, as well as like the Cosmere as a whole in those epigraphs.
Yeah, do we just kind of want to explain what they are in case anybody was confused? Because I feel like on the first read, I didn't really understand what those were.
I mean, it becomes apparent like halfway through the book when it's like, oh yeah, no, these are excerpts from Alendi's journal, right?
Okay, well, you're very astute. I think I was confused.
Well,
the entire first read.
And to be fair, we both just read through it again, but this was like my fourth or fifth read through, and your second or third, something like that. More, less,
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
All right. So those epigraphs, they were excerpts from Alendi's journal.
Yes, and that's the book that Vin found in the Lord Ruler's kind of pseudo altar inside his house, which
is weird. But anyways.
Well, it reminded me intensely of like, I don't know if you remember when we went to, I want to say it was Assisi or something, where they had this giant cathedral, but inside the cathedral there was also just a tiny little shack, and it was, it's like a building within a building, and it's like, but that whole room, the sanctuary within, the Lord Ruler's, within Shedek Craw, right?
Credit Shaw.
Yeah.
I believe.
The little sanctuary within there reminded me intensely of like that practice where you've got something that's a holy site within a giant holy site. And I'm pretty sure that was intentional. Anyway, so Vin stole a book from there, and it was Alendi's journal, and that's the source of the
Alendi was
epigraphs.
supposed to be the one to take up the power.
Yes, who was supposed to defeat the deepness, who was supposed to do all this. But plot twist, it was his Pac-Man Rorschach, whatever, who betrayed him and became the Lord Ruler. Whoa.
So that was the whole point of the epigraphs, is that things, you were supposed to hopefully be able to notice that things weren't matching up between Alendi being so concerned, a nice guy,
Altruistic,
and what doesn't match up with the Lord, what we knew about the Lord Ruler,
who was brutal. And I remember there are a few things that stuck out from the epigraphs, right, where they talked about how Reshek, didn't think it was right that the terracemen with their great feruchemical powers should be made to serve Alendi just because he was prophesied to be the hero of the ages, right?
Well, he didn't like that it wasn't a terraceman who fulfilled the prophecy.
Exactly, right? And that sort of reeks to me of like, I don't want to say, racism. It was, there's a tinge of racism, but also like eugenics, right?
I would say more eugenics, but yeah.
Yeah. But then you get to, the present day, and the Lord Ruler has this giant eugenics program. He's trying to get rid of all the other terrorist men because he doesn't want a Feruchemist to challenge his power, or to be able to even really explain how he is so powerful. He wants it to be mysterious, as well as, the Ska and the nobles shall not intermix, right? And that was a sort of through line that stuck out to me. I didn't catch it on my first read through, but it was like, oh yeah, okay. Now that I know the twist, it's like, oh yeah, this is a hint. This totally matches up.
We should also kind of take a moment to explain, because I feel like it can be confusing on your first read what exactly happened. So the Lord Ruler, he was a Feruchemist, or Rashek, he was a Feruchemist. Then he took up the power, became a
sliver of the infinite, whatever that means.
No. Why am I blanking on the word?
Mistborn?
He became a Mistborn.
Right, he became an
So
Allomancer.
then he had the ability to burn... Is it gold? No.
Well, this doesn't get explained until much later in the series. What you're talking about there is compounding, and that's like... They talk about it in great detail in Era 2, right?
Yeah, but they still kind of explain that Vin had to remove his bracers in order to, and then he,
which pierced his flesh. So that, and I guess there's hints about it where Vin tries to burn one of Sazed's metal mines, right? Mm-hmm. But she can't act. She senses that there's more power there, but it's walled off from her, and that's because it's not her metal mind. So the Lord Ruler, who is both a Mistborn and a full Feruchemist, well, he can store power and then also burn it.
Which is how he's been able to live for forever and seem so young.
How he gets his age back, and how he's able to heal himself. These are all explored later on in the series, I guess. But yeah, no. So he's not all powerful. He
just seemed like it, and removing the bracers, made him age very quickly, and he ended up dying.
Right. And they also, the other thing in the epigraphs that really talks about is that allomancy, the thing that lets the Mistborns burn all the metals, or the Mistings burn one metal at a time, or one metal each, I guess. That didn't exist before Rashek ascended. So there's...
Wait, what?
There was no allomancy.
Oh yeah, because allomancy was part of preservations.
And ascending. And there's more about that in the next book.
Yeah.
But they talked about it and how it was a notable absence from Alendi's journal. So there's more to come.
I missed that somehow.
That's okay.
There's so much to think about.
And that's one of the themes that I really liked about this book, right? Is that there's always another secret, as Kelsey is so fond of saying. And that shows up in terms of like the plot threads that are intentionally left dangling, like where the heck did allomancy come from? What the heck does it even mean for the Lord Ruler to have ascended? But there's also other more mundane and also like not mundane secrets, like between Kelsier keeping the secret that he was planning to martyr himself from the crew, the twist about the Lord Ruler's identity, just frankly like the number of disguises that's going on in the story. There's Camon playing as a nobleman, Vin playing as a noblewoman, Kandra, whose entire existence is masquerading as someone else. Everybody in this book's got secrets. And there's always more.
Yeah, which is why it takes a couple rereads.
Yeah, to really pick up on, the clues that somebody has a secret before it's revealed.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love books that I can get more and more out of every time I reread it, but I'm also like, Brandon, really? Like, this is your entry series that you want people to trust you on before getting into Way of Kings? Like, this is still a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I found it very enjoyable even on my first read through. You know, the amount
I
of
definitely did not like the book on my first read.
The amount of foreshadowing and things that it's obviously foreshadowing. You know, some of that just glorious. I love the foreshadowing here. What's something else you like about the book? I can go if you wanna think on it for a second.
Well, something that I wanted more of every time I read the book, I expect there to be more, and even though I know there's not, is Vin's brother. I always wanted him to be a larger part of the story.
More than just the voice in his head, or in her head, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like that space where you can just imagine because I mean, all you really know about him is that he's so cruel, right? And was a big influence on her and how she became so paranoid.
But then at the very end of the book, you learn that he was taken by the Inquisitors.
And never broke.
And even under torture, didn't give her up.
Yeah.
So, like, that is definitely redeeming. Well, it is redeeming.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he was just doing his best to prepare her for when, you know, he got caught.
I mean, I don't know, man. I think he was just abusive to her, right? And, like, it's...
But obviously he still cared for her if he didn't give her up and under torture.
Agree to disagree, I think.
Well, anyways, I always want to know more about him and to get his background and to kind of see him live on screen, and we never do.
Yeah.
I know you were pretty excited to talk about the Inquisitors.
Well, I just like the Inquisitors in terms of, like, a character design. I like they're the best baddies, right? I mean, just in terms of as they are as villains, they've got spikes in the eyes, intimidating. How terrible and rad is that, right? They're weirdly stretched out, kind of like, you know, a Slender Man kind of design. You know, they just picture right out of a horror thing. They're superhumanly strong and fast. Again, great, you know, horror bad guys, and they're all, you know, basically in a cult, especially with, and again, more to come on this in the sequels. You know, the process for making an Inquisitor is messy, and all you know so far is, well, that's a lot of blood, right? You know, they're like evil cultists, and plus they've got cute matching eyebrow tattoos.
I do like the face tattoos, the description of the intricate, swirling patterns.
Well, and I mean, this is another thing. You know, a lot of the things I think that this book does well is like the mood pieces. Like, you see fan art or even like official art for Mistborn, and it's, you know, you've got the mist cloaks, which they're just, you know, even if they're not, you know, trying to, they always, you know, any art of somebody in a mist cloak looks like they're striking a pose while also being sneaky, while also being mysterious and brooding, despite the fact that a lot of that sometimes contradictory. And it fits really well with, you know, the whole ash and mist.
I still don't get mist cloaks.
It's for the drama.
Why do you need strips of fabric? No one needs strips of fabric.
It's for the drama.
To me, that's just going to cause a lot of wind resistance.
Oh my god. You're like, what's her name from The Incredibles? Like Edna. No cloaks. No capes.
There's a reason for no capes.
I get it.
They do a whole sequence on no capes and why no capes.
I know.
Makes a lot of sense. I do not get the mist cloaks.
Like I said, they're great as, you know, not everything has to make sense, and that's just the mood, the tone it strikes is just awesome.
One of the words of Brandon, he was describing, was the words of Brandon or was it annotations for this book? He's like, yeah, so we had some beta readers for this, and like all the women kept asking for like more about the dresses. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah.
Well, like, and that's one of the things I really like.
If you're gonna say that Vin really likes the dresses, then man, you gotta describe the dresses.
Yeah, and just the contrast between the opulent ballrooms and the pretty dresses, the you know, and the perfumes and all of that, compared to the squalor on the streets and the dark, broody mist cloaks.
I mean, to me, part of that is what defines a dystopia, because like if you think that the Hunger Games did this too, where everybody was starving on the outside, and then
Yep. And it's that
Katniss arrives at these parties and everybody's eating so much and then
Yep.
going to the bathrooms and puking it up so they can eat more.
Yep. And there's and it's that juxtaposition that really, you know, lets you know that it's a dystopia, and you know that it sets the tone for that theme of, you know, class warfare that, you know, I talked about in the pre-read episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, you know, going back to that theme though, the plot was driven so much by the class warfare, but I feel like the overall message was that, we're not so different after all, right? Because Vin goes from being, you know, in a common street gang to being a spy in the aristocracy and in a more highfalutin, you know, fancy gang with Kelsier. And, you know, when you compare those two extremes, in her, you know, in Kamon's gang, she's surrounded by, you know, low-class sociopaths who are going to beat her, cheat her, demean her, and steal from her at any opportunity. In the aristocracy, in these, you know, in these fancy balls, she's still surrounded by higher class sociopaths who will cheat from her and demean her and who joke about each other's deaths. And by the way, if, you know, they rape and kill, you know, other Ska, and if they found out that she was Ska, there's no telling what they'd do to her. So it's, you know, on the negative side, it's like, well, they're not so different, right? I guess a cheerier note, she has her good-natured friends in Kelsier's gang, and that is sort of matched by, you know, Elend and his friends, where, you know, Vin even confronts Kelsier's crew and tells them that they, you know, that they're not really Ska, right? Because they live like noblemen, and yeah, they have all these, you know,
Their lives are so much better.
Yeah, their lives are so much better, but they also have these high-minded conversations about what they want to do, and, you know, Ham goes off on philosophical tangents. I think Ham would get along really well with Ellen's crew. I would like to see that in, you know, some alternate universe. You're giving me a look. It's an
Hammond in Ellen's crew?
Yeah, because they're talking, you know, Ellen's group of you know, Ellen's boys are talking about, you know, what as a manner of government, what the Lord Ruler does wrong.
In his philosophy.
Yeah, in his philosophy
groups.
group.
Gotcha.
Not like he doesn't have a thieving gang, but he's got a crew, he's got a group, his posse. You know, like I said, I'd like, in some alternate universe, I'd like to see, you know, Ham and Ellen's group, you know, just chatting about philosophy.
You do love the philosophy.
I do. I kind of wish we had more Ham in this book, because out of all the characters there, I mean, he's the one that, you know, maybe I'd want to hang out with the most, I'd say, where I also have a, you know, hobby of basic, you know, not too in-depth philosophy, but just like, if we're trying to kill God, does that make us inherently evil? I mean, he's doing some things that are pretty bad, but it's like, I love that. It's good.
So let's talk a little bit about Kelsier.
Okay.
So on the first read, I'm like, oh man, this Kelsier guy, he's like pretty cool. He's definitely our hero. Like, he's pretty awesome. And then on this read, I noticed a bit on previous reads, but on this read, I was just like, oh no. Oh no. He is exceedingly violent and just does not care for anybody outside of his group.
Well, I mean,
just killing recklessly.
Yeah.
Like, why did I think this person was cool?
Well, I mean, I've got a whole soapbox to get on about that.
I'm not surprised.
Okay, yeah, all right. let's get on my soapbox moment. This was also my first read through where I was also reading through the annotations on Brando Sando's website. So, plug out there. He's got annotations for several of his books listed on his website. So if you want a chapter by chapter breakdown of what he was going for, what he was thinking about as he was writing the book, that's your companion for the books. And so it's only reading through those that I got the details of what he was going for with why we were supposed to be disturbed by Kelsier's behavior.
Disturbed is a good word.
Disturbed is a good word, right? But the problem is, so you're supposed to be disturbed by his reckless killing of any nobleman, anybody who works for the nobleman. They sold out. The problem is, I grew up cheering for Luke Skywalker as he slaughtered stormtroopers by the dozen and then blew up the Death Star to get any of them he missed with his blaster. Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli mowed down orcs for the heinous crime of being orcs and being on the other side of the battle, right? And, more present, things that are coming out right now, we've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where there's just all these nameless, faceless minions who are part of the bad guy machine, whether they're Hydra or, aliens or whatever. We don't shed a tear for them when Iron Man or Captain America or Thor just throws them off a cliff or bashes them around. They're dead. They're not going to be in the sequel, But, we don't look at them like they're sociopaths. We don't look at them like they're disturbed. That's just, it's an action movie. It's an action, story. They're gonna kill the little guys. That's how it goes. So, it can be a little bit different when there's a named bad guy. Like, the hero will spare anybody with a name, like Luke Skywalker will spare Darth Vader or Emperor Palpatine. But, Kelsier kind of does the same thing in Mistborn. The only really named nobleman he thinks about killing is Elend, and he actually ends up sparing him instead of killing him, right?
And not for his sake, but for
his sake, right? So, from that perspective of the things that are supposed to disturb us about Kelsier, his basically genocidal hatred for the nobleman, and also, his reckless tax to killing Ska or people who are going to get caught up in the war. That's just kind of, par for the course for action heroes, right?
I worry about our society sometimes.
Well, okay, yeah, but yeah. So
that's just what I'm getting from soapbox.
Yeah. But
let's just point out how other fantasy and entertainment also does this.
Also, it's part of the suspension of disbelief, right? Luke's got, it's a running joke on the Reddit prequel memes thing that they're tallying up war crimes that all the heroes commit, right? If it were real life, they would not be heroes; they would be tried for war crimes, right? But it's
Avengers were.
What's that?
They got to that point in Avengers.
Right. And so, but they don't really close the loop on it. If you're talking about Civil War for Captain America, they kind of just leave that unaddressed at the end of the movie. So, I understand only through reading the annotations what we were supposed to find disturbing about Kelsier's character. And it is contrasted with Vin, who, spares even the minions.
Yeah, she doesn't. She shoots to disable rather than kill.
Well, not for Sean, the fiance.
Yeah.
So she doesn't.
Well, there's a little bit more personal history there.
Yeah, but where I was thinking in particular, where she spares the minions, is when she's assaulting Krennic Shaw the second time, right. And then those minions eventually come back and save her because she spared them. Mm-hmm. So she would have been screwed, but that was definitely lost on me in my first 3 read-throughs.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot here. There's a lot in every Brandon Sanderson book.
Yeah, but something that I find there's a little foible about this book that I find endearing now. And I didn't even notice my first 2 read-throughs. It's those Brandon Sanderson cliches where And I only noticed this after I got on the subreddits and people started talking about how often people raise their eyebrows in conversation.
Oh.
And now anytime I read through this book or, any of his other earlier books, I just imagine people, eyebrows constantly waggling up and down the whole time.
That is a trademark of his.
Anytime, so it's the raising their eyebrow in conversation. Anything that's not perfect is maladroit or maladroitly, which SAT word right there.
Well, show don't tell.
Yeah. No, well, like I said, I didn't even notice it until, I was on the subreddits.
I didn't notice until you told me.
Oh,
yeah. I know, we've been talking about it for the last, 2 years.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like that was actually the only really, weak parts of this novel was the, I didn't see Kelsier's flaws until I read the annotations. But,
well, I thought a lot about Ned Stark this time around.
From Game of Thrones? What about him?
Well, just that you read the first Game of Thrones book, and Ned Stark's and he is your main character for that book, and then he gets killed.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's that's
jarring.
and that reminds me of Kelsier. He was one of our main characters, and then he dies.
So this is a trope. It's I think on TV tropes, whatever, it's called the false protagonist. Mm-hmm. And it is one of my favorites. It's kind of a spoiler, I guess, to share where else you see it. But the show I'm thinking of aired in 2007, so it's you've had your chance. But in the anime Gurren Lagann, more than anybody else, Kelsier reminds me of Kamina, who is one of the characters there, who's this bombastic, larger than life character who strings along his shy, basically adopted younger brother as they go and take on the machinations of this evil empire. And then at episode 7, he dies in battle. And there's another 6 episodes of just grief, right? Where everybody is shocked. And it's one of those, Kamen had such a big setting on the tone. It's when you see stuff about Gurren Lagann in media, he's often there just because he was such a big part of the tone. But it is, I love that trope.
You've lost me completely.
And that's okay.
Hopefully someone out there listening appreciates that reference.
It's a really popular anime. I don't know.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. Anyway.
But anyways, Kelsier's whole arc just reminded me of Ned Stark. That's all.
Well, but
I know there's differences, and we'll have to talk about those differences in the next.
Well, I'm just thinking about what we were just talking about, where Kelsier's flaws is that he's basically got a genocidal hatred of the noble people, and his principles are maybe a little bit suspicious. Ned Stark is in some ways just the polar opposite, where he is so strictly principled that that's what gets him to lose his head. Yeah. So let's see. In terms of Easter eggs or stuff that maybe you didn't notice in just within this book, spot the Hoid. Where's Hoid? He's the spy or informant that Kelsier talks to, who pretends he's blind or can't really see that well, but is clearly can see better when Kelsier tosses the money to him. Mm-hmm. The other kind of Easter eggy thing is the old man from the prologue. I think his name is Manus. He makes an appearance later on in the caves after the army goes on the suicide run.
I love it when side characters return.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit about Sazed.
Okay.
I think Sazed is my favorite character.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like in fantasy, you've always got this character that, always has it together, is always a font of wisdom.
So you're a Gandalf, you're Dumbledore's?
Yes, exactly. And I feel like Sazed fills that role.
Yeah, he's
and
definitely...
he's just a very comforting character to have on screen.
Yeah, in my view, he's also, and he's one of the other foils for Kelsier, right? Where they're both mentors for Vin, but whereas Kelsier is reckless and, homicidal, Sazed is...
a pacifist.
Yeah, he's a pacifist, but he's also... he thinks things through, and he strikes me as calm. If we're going to try to say it in probably one word, I'd say civilized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It always makes me happy when he's on screen.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, like everybody in the universe, I let him blend into the background, and I notice more when he's not there and things start to go wrong. Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, I think he's a big part of the success of the team.
Oh, yeah, definitely. For sure.
And I am very excited to say that he is a large part of the next 2 books.
He is, yeah.
And he's definitely there's more happening with him that I'm going to love to get into in later episodes.
Well, do we want that's a nice segue to, like, what do we know that we don't know about that's, going to be explored in the rest of the trilogy?
Well, obviously there are more secrets to uncover.
Always more secrets, and some of them are even talked about in the epigraphs, but we'll get there when we get there.
So there's that very ominous comment by the Lord Ruler as he's dying that you have no idea what I've been doing for all of you.
Right.
So we are going to find out what in fact he has been doing.
Right. Well, but the other things,
because spoiler, it's not nothing.
Yeah, it's not nothing. I guess less obviously, there's also, we just don't know very much about the metallic arts, right? We know that there's more than one. There's Allomancy, but also Furukami. And they're both secret, but Furukami, extra secret, right? And we started out the book not really knowing anything about Allomancy. And then it's introduced.
Then the Inquisitors don't really use either of those 2 systems.
Yeah, they do. They certainly burn metals, and they push, they pull. They've got pewter. You're not going to talk about. We'll get there when we get there.
All right. We'll get there when we get there.
But we started out thinking that there was just 10 metals, right? But
as we're going, metal. Yeah, but as we go through the story, they're like, yeah, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, Kelsier has an 11th metal, where if you talk about, atium, where it shows you the target's future, or gold, which shows you your own past. The 11th metal shows you the target's past. There's an implication there that there's a 13th metal that shows you your own future, right? And the Steel Inquisitors had another metal that depleted everything you had. Is there another one that matches up with that?
What is its opposite?
Yeah, exactly. That does the opposite. More to come in the sequels, probably. Maybe. Who knows?
Some of this stuff you don't even find out till Era 2.
That's right. Well, and that's like, if you don't want to be spoiled about how they discover how Allomancy and Furukami work, don't look it up online. Like, don't look up the metal tables. You've got the Ars Arcanum in the back.
Oh, we should also note that the Ars Arcanum in the back is true for the point you are in the series.
Yes, they're written in universe.
Yes, they're in universe.
Right. So, like, the Ars Arcanum, as they discover more, it's different at the end of Mistborn: The Final Empire compared to the Well of Ascension, compared to Hero of the Ages, which is the 3rd book.
And then different for
in Era 2
it's
also
well.
They learn more, they discover more. So don't look it up online, because you
also
might spoil yourself.
read the Ars Arcanum. I just skipped it all my first couple reads, and it's like, no, you actually need to go through and read the Ars Arcanum.
It's presented like a glossary, but there's little if you're a casual reader, don't feel bound to it. But, there's little Easter eggs in there that, draw connections and show you where, kind of hints at where things are going. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that I missed my first read through until it's, thrown in your face in sequels, is that allomancy can have negative impacts on the users, right? Where the example in this book is that pewter drag can kill a person, right? Where you...
Oh, yeah, because you're overextending your body.
Yeah. The other thing was, and I don't know if this is an inconsistency that's, on purpose or, to show how little they know about allomancy, or if it's, an accident, from Brandon Sanderson. But they talk about burning poor quality metals and how that can kill a person, right? Or make them very sick.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know how much that can be trusted. Like, Kelsier clearly doesn't know everything. And, it seems like in one breath he told Vin that she probably only survived Kimon's beatings due to having trace amounts of pewter in her system from the eating utensils. And she had also gotten her quote-unquote luck, from that same source as well. And then in the next breath he tells her, don't burn impure metals because they could kill you. And it's like, well, hold on. Either the impure metals that gave her trace amounts in her system are what helped her survive, or they could kill her. I don't think you can do both.
I don't know if that bothers me or not. I mean, he did have the one throwaway line. It's where, if there's a supplier supplying you metals,
yeah.
If they give you a bad batch, well, that person doesn't last long.
Yeah. Well, and
it's like, if you're eating something, like, yeah, there are trace amounts of metal in there, but, like, if it's not going to harm you just by eating it, like, it probably isn't going to hurt you to burn it either.
Like I said, it just stuck out to me on this read through that it's like, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure if that's something that can be trusted.
It didn't bother me.
Fair enough. So,
I still find the magic systems in this world confusing.
You want to talk about it or just leave it at that?
I don't know. I feel like we need a whole episode just dedicated to the magic systems.
I think we can do that. I think that can be arranged.
Okay. Because I still have trouble keeping it in my head.
Well,
Brandon can't do anything simple. Brandon has to have, like, oh, here's one system, and here's another, and here's how they interact. And, like, he just keeps putting more and more and more into it. And I'm just like, I can't keep up.
Well, it's like that.
And he does this with all of his worlds.
Well, he's you know how there are some science fiction authors that are loosey goosey, and then there's others that are hard science fiction. Like the Martian. Anything by Andy Weir, like The Martian or Artemis or Project Hail Mary. Those are going to be your hard science fiction books where everything is at least plausible, and it might not be simple.
Really,
but it's plausible. Yeah.
The Martian is plausible.
The science in it is, right?
Okay.
Like, that's the whole conceit of the book, right?
Okay.
Maybe the plot points aren't, but yeah. And similarly with like The Expanse, where those are they're at least internally consistent, and they're hard science fiction. Whereas your Star Wars, it's like, yeah, it's basically magic. I'm not gonna worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, Brando Sando's big thing was bringing that sort of approach to fantasy as well, where you've got your hard magic systems where there are rules, and maybe your characters don't know what they all are, but it's in a process of discovery, right? So
there's too much discovery. There's too much to know. I get very lost.
Yeah, I mean but it's also interesting, right? When they make a breakthrough, when they make a discovery, you kind of you join in their excitement. At least that's my take. That's my experience with it.
Sometimes, and other times I'm just like, I do not understand what just happened.
Yeah. Well,
like, I've reread Mistborn enough times where I kind of get it, sort of, but like Stormlight, that last
we're not
book,
talking about other.
I'm just saying, I think I've only read that once or twice, and I think I'm gonna have to read it quite a few more times before I feel like I even begin to understand what happened.
Side. Yeah. No, I get you.
That's part of the reason why I want to do this podcast, because like I What?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Let's talk about this.
That is the whole that is why we started this podcast, was because there's details and nuance, and yeah.
And then, yeah.
But anything else you want to talk about for Mistborn?
Yeah, I guess just a couple closing thoughts. Not that being female or girly is any one thing, but I feel like Brandon had some growth to go through writing female characters. Vin wasn't that satisfactory to me. I mean, of all of the characters in all of the novels, I do find myself more closely resembling Vin than any other character. But I don't know, I feel like she wasn't as dimensional as some of his other characters. And luckily he has gotten better at writing female characters.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that he's talked about as well, where he just wanted not just to be better at writing female characters for this book, but he said, if he was going to do an adaptation, which probably is in the works, he would add, he would gender swap, some of the characters, where I think in particular he wanted Ham in any adaptation to be female.
Well, and that's the other thing. So
there just aren't that
in the first few drafts of this, Vin was a boy.
Yes. And then he made the big leap to make Vin a tomboy instead.
Yeah, so just he has gotten better at writing female characters, which I'm very thankful for. But one of the reasons why I was so prominent rereading this is because he has gotten better. So I just wanted to mention that if you're unsatisfied with Vin's character,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but also it gets better.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to mention was that whole heist setup that was pretty strong in the beginning. I don't know. I feel like he didn't carry it through.
Well, it's like the heist didn't actually happen. They never stole the Lord Ruler's Atium.
Yeah. It feels unsatisfying to me to have that whole big, heist setup at the beginning of the book, and then it just kind of fades away. And I know that's life, and it's realistic.
I
but
agree to disagree.
I disagree about what?
Oh, I didn't find that unsatisfying at all. I was like, that was part of the, you knew you were going into the climax when everything fell apart. It was, oh boy, it fell apart dramatically.
I don't know. I really love my heist movies. Love Italian Job.
Yeah, where it all comes together so satisfyingly.
Ocean's movies, yeah. And
Yeah.
and then at the end, it's a very satisfying end.
Yeah.
To those kind of movies, and that you just don't get that with this.
Oh no, this is not that. It could have been, but it wasn't.
But every time we start with that heist setup, that's what I want.
Yeah.
All right, and I know we didn't talk about the Kandra, but that's because we learned so much more about them in the other two books that I really want to save that conversation for later.
Oh yeah.
So this was kind of non-Cosmere related. I think our next episode will be talking about this book and how it relates to the Cosmere.
In the greater scheme of things. Yeah. But thanks for listening. This has been Cosmere Casual. If you have any questions, feedback, just want to talk to us, our email address is cosmerecasual@gmail.com.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.